Hello everybody, and welcome to my review of the final Jon Pertwee season of Doctor Who, Season 11. This season introduced the character of Sarah Jane Smith, as portrayed by Elizabeth Sladen, and it sent off this third incarnation of the Doctor. There is a fair amount to discuss here, and one of the things I also want to talk about is the person who has been in charge of the show for the past 5 seasons, Barry Letts. This season of the show served as a send-off to this era of Doctor Who with the third Doctor in charge. Obviously, Barry Letts did stay on for one more serial with Tom Baker, so he isn't quite done, but we have seen most of what he has to offer. And I have to say that I have really enjoyed this incarnation of the Doctor and this portrayal of the character. There were things that at first I didn't enjoy as much. The more actiony elements with Jon Pertwee, that stuff didn't quite work for me because it was just something that didn't feel connected to what we'd seen before with the character. But eventually it did grow on me and I was fine with it and even enjoyed it at places. And I found it to be a part of, this incarnation of the character. So I thought that stuff actually ended up working and being a part of the show. That was one of the things they sort of forced on me enough to the point where I was like, okay, this is Doctor Who. And one of the interesting things about this season is that I enjoyed every episode. There was no episode that I thought was average or okay. I think probably even the weakest episode had quite a bit to like in it, which is something I can actually say about most of Jon Pertwee's seasons. There are, I think, 2 stories from his entire era that I gave less than a 7 out of 10 to, and even those ones were at least, 6.5, 6.75, so whatever they ended up being. So that much remained true for this season. There was quite a bit to enjoy, but there was only one really standout episode, and that was The Time Warrior, which I thought was thoroughly entertaining, a lot of fun, and a really rather solid introduction to this brand new companion with this really interesting new villain, and I liked the way that Lynx was used within that story. It was really quite well done, and the rest of the season was a pretty standard affair for Jon Pertwee and the Third Doctor. It was enjoyable. The stories were fun to watch. I had my problems with some of them in particular, but none of them were that offensive, save one. And even that one had a lot to like in its first half. So there was nothing here that really made the season horrible or made it bad. It was a pretty good and enjoyable season of the show. I liked it. If I was to compare it to any other Jon Pertwee season, it would definitely be season 9, which is the second one with Jo Grant. Again, with that season, there was only one story that I really liked, and the rest of them were pretty enjoyable. And that is the case here as well, which I think is quite interesting. It does feel like a bit of a weaker note to end his tenure on. This is possibly my least favorite season of his, which is kind of a shame, but it's certainly not a bad season. As said, there's plenty to enjoy within it, but it does kind of feel like maybe it should have ended a little bit sooner. I feel like if they had managed to wrap things up in season 10, it probably would have felt more right. Because as much as I do enjoy the character throughout here, in season 11, it starts to feel like maybe he didn't need to stay quite this long. And I'm not committing myself to that thought, I'm not 100% certain, but that's an idea I had while watching this one is, did we need all of these stories with Jon Pertwee when we've already wrapped up him with the best companion that he's had, Jo Grant? I think it probably just would have been more satisfying had things concluded in season 10, but having said that, he does also have good chemistry with Sarah Jane Smith, who is a really enjoyable character throughout here. She feels distinctly different from both of his previous companions, Liz Shaw and Jo. I really like the dynamic that they have, this sort of combative nature right from the first episode, which is quite enjoyable, and of course, they come to like each other a lot faster than, say, Jo Grant. And I think because of that, she did work for me a bit more than Katie Manning's character in season 8, because with that relationship, it took a lot longer for them to enjoy each other's company, and here that happens much more quickly, which I think just makes the show more fun. It really is kind of a strange season to me, because it does very much feel as though his time as the Doctor has come to a close. All of his best stuff is in the previous 4 seasons, and this one, while having some good stuff to offer, feels just a little bit different, It's hard to pinpoint what exactly the thing that makes it feel this way is, but regardless, it does feel a little bit out of place. And I think even if the stories were better, it would still feel this way. It would still feel a little bit like it doesn't quite mesh with the rest of his era, at least to me. But maybe that's just how it comes across, because I feel that in the first 4 seasons of this man's tenure as the Doctor, we saw basically all that he had to offer in this character. We get maybe a little bit more in his final story, but even then, it's really just his final moments that feel fresh, and the rest of it is stuff we've seen before. So I think the fact that this one doesn't feel like it's offering a lot more for that character is why it feels a little bit unnecessary, even though, as said, I really did enjoy it. I think that Jon Pertwee was really good as the Doctor and is one of my favorites of the classic era. I really enjoyed his portrayal. I think about as much as I enjoyed Patrick Troughton's portrayal of the character. He just brought something brand new and fresh to the part. He has this energy to it, this charisma, and I think he's a Doctor that you would feel pretty safe traveling with as well. I've also always enjoyed his sarcastic lines and his rude lines that he has, particularly towards people that are getting in his way when he has this short temper. It's so much fun to watch throughout this entire era, and that is one aspect of him that I do really enjoy. And I think there's just a lot of different parts to this incarnation that Jon Pertwee really nails. I think that if you gave all of these different elements of the Third Doctor to a different actor and you just said, here, take this and run with it, you would have a different character. And that is just because Jon Pertwee absolutely nails it and brings something brand new and fresh to the part. It is very much his Doctor, and he does such a good job in here. I just can't help but be impressed by that. I've loved experiencing these past 5 seasons with him, and I knew that I would like this Doctor from what I had seen. I had enjoyed him, and he was one of the ones that I most wanted to really explore because I just knew I would like him. There are some that I wanted to watch because I wasn't sure if I was going to end up liking them, like Patrick Troughton, where I wasn't entirely sure if I was going to come around to that Doctor, which I of course ended up doing. But with Jon Pertwee, I always knew that I liked him. I always knew I was going to, and I knew that there were a lot of stories that were supposed to be good or great that I would probably have a really good time with, and that was true. And it was because of all of the different things that went into this era of Doctor Who, largely contributed to by Jon Pertwee, who has been great as this Doctor, and I have really loved experiencing all of these seasons with him. He is one of my favorites of the classic show, at least so far, and even though this season does feel a little bit unnecessary, it is still a really enjoyable season, and Jon Pertwee is good within it. I'm probably going to mention this in my robot review a little bit more, but Barry Letts was obviously the producer for 5 seasons of the show, and I think he did a good job. I really liked this era. It definitely feels different to what we've gotten before, and in places, it did overstay its welcome just a tad. But there's so much to like in here, and that is down to the producer, Barry Letts, and the script editor, Terrence Dix. I think they did a really good job of creating a fresh vision of the show that is just super enjoyable and different to what we've gotten before in definitely enough ways to keep the show enjoyable. They definitely did a really good job with that, and I will be thankful to them for making this era of the show. Overall, season 11 of the show is still pretty good. It is definitely on the weaker side of Jon Pertwee's run as the Doctor, but there was a lot to enjoy in here, particularly the man's performance as this character and the introduction of Sarah Jane Smith as portrayed by Elizabeth Sladen. If you like this character and you like this era of the show, then hopefully you will enjoy it as I did. Although it does feel a tad unnecessary in this era of the show, there is still a lot to like here. I had a good time with this season, and I'm going to give Doctor Who Season 11 a rating of 7.25 out of 10. And that does it for today, folks. If you join me soon, I will be bringing you a ranking of this season, and then after that, a top 10 of Jon Pertwee's era. And that is it. That is all for Jon Pertwee. We are all done after that, and we move on to the next incarnation of the character. I've had a lot of fun talking about this man and his era of the show, and I still have a couple more videos, but then that's it. There is very little more in the Jon Pertwee journey on this channel, and then we are moving on. So I hope you enjoy those videos, and I hope to see you around for those, but if not, that is totally fine, so long as you know that I appreciate your time here today. And with that said, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and have a lovely week.